Alrighty, how's it going? Jonathan here with Boston Collectors. Apologies for the high energy in the last few uploads. I ended up banging out like 4 or 5 videos that day, and it was in the morning. I had my coffee, so listening to those played back, I was on something else. So apologies for that. But today we've got Darth Revan, and it did take me a little bit of time. I'm going to be honest. I'm not familiar with Legends material, and there's so much to learn in the canon universe that I've not really stuck my toes into the Legends content. Maybe small little snippets here and there, but nothing in terms of characters like Darth Revan here. So with that said, I had to do a lot of deep dive into who he is, what he's about, because when you hear how he's explained, it's one thing, but when you actually go and do your own research, it's another. So I've brought a couple tidbits of information that should hopefully help the video and give you all a little bit of insight without going too deep into who this guy is. So before we really start getting into the photos, you all know how this goes. We like to talk about the pricing here first. All new R&D, we've never had a figure like this before. There are also 2 different versions, being the exclusive and the collector's edition. The only difference here is the commemorative coin, which is still timed for a little over 3 days. Now the expected to ship date is between April and September of next year, which is 2025 as of this video. And we also have the flexible payment option starting in March of 2025 at $60.75. Now with the price point being at $270, the NRD is set for 10%. You're going to have to come up with that $27 in order to place your order. Now as we continue down, we have I don't understand why this is so large. It doesn't need to be this massive on the sheet here. But as we continue down, we have the what's in the box, which is what we're here for. But I do want to run you all through the about me because this is important as we continue. Now, in Star Wars Legends, Revan, who was once a Jedi, turned his back on the Jedi Order and became an enigmatic Sith Lord, forming a Sith Empire that waged war against the Jedi Order and Galactic Republic. Ever since the character's first introduction, many fans have been captivated by Revan and his story. Give in to the dark side and have this amazing collectible figure in your Star Wars display. Now, we don't need everything here, but there is no mention of where this character came from, and as I said before, this is important in the information that I have to share later on. Now as we move on to the what's in the box section here, we have the authentic and detailed likeness of Darth Revan in Star Wars, the body with over 30 points of articulation, 1 pair of relaxed hands, 1 pair of lightsaber holding hands, and 1 pair of force using hands. No fists, which is rather unfortunate. You all know how I feel about that. He can actually ball his up, unlike Starkiller. As for the costume though, we have the armor with the black undershirt and hood, embedded with bendable wire. This is massive. Moving on to the costume though, we have the Darth Revan armor with the black undershirt and hood, as well as the black cape, which are embedded with bendable wire. This is great for dynamic posing, although I personally prefer the draped look to a lot of the clothing. This is still great for those really dynamic poses that collectors might prefer. We also have the black scarf, a pair of metallic copper armbands, the black pleated hakama with the red sash, the black belt with the silver ring, a pair of black pants, and lastly a pair of metallic gray copper boots. Now chances are those aren't going to be die cast. If you're not familiar with how these things go, it's going to be plastic painted to appear as if it's die cast, so just getting that out of the way. By way of weapons, we have 1 LED lit purple lightsaber, which is his redeemed hilt design, and that will be USB power operated. With it, we'll also have a dynamic effect if that's something you like to use. Next, we have the LED lit red lightsaber, which is the fallen Revan hilt design, which is also USB power operated. Like the purple design, this will come with the red dynamic effect. Apart from that though, they're providing 2 different lightsaber hilts, which are the same designs, but they aren't going to be LED lit. And last but not least, we also have the Star Wars base featuring the nameplate. Now as we move on back up to the top of the page here, we don't use the sideshow photos here, so let's go ahead and jump on over to Facebook. Now, the suit design feels like an amalgamation with a few creative liberties, right? Because in the video games, you could alter some of his suit designs and you can change some of the colors. That's not saying Hot Toys need to stick to whatever this design is, but I kind of like the idea of it personally. With that said though, the bulk of the design appears if it's from the Old Republic, even though Darth Revan is from the Knights of the Old Republic game. Before cycling through the photos though, I'll also say comparing the novel cover based on the game titled Revan, it's the closest design that I could personally find. And again, we're talking like down to the minutia of details, which I still find interesting. Creative liberties and all that. So with that out of the way, let's go ahead and look at some of the photos here. The opening card looks fantastic, great Photoshop work. I love the look of the lightsabers here on the front card. We also have the Darth Revan nameplate here, which I really wish that we got I think it would have been cool, right? If this is their first time diving into Legends, I think I would have liked to have seen a base design that's specific to Legends characters. I'm not upset at this because I do like this base design in terms of that graded look, but I think it just would have been a little bit cooler. I'm not taking points off of it though, because I still like the design. Now I do like the fact that we have a split cut boot design here, which will hinder us ever so slightly, but it should be okay to a certain extent. But again, I do like the fact that there is some split in the boot. Now as we move up, we can see a bit of the wires here in the cape, as well as a little bit there in the hood. Now it will be interesting to see how bendable that is, if it's as bendable as maybe Din Djarin from season 2 of The Mandalorian. I personally prefer the drape, but again, I do like the fact that it's incorporated into the design. We also have a better look at the bronze-like armor piece here on the chest, as well as the gauntlets. I really like the look of this. I do feel like the mask and the sash here in the middle, they complement each other well. Now, as we look at the hilt designs here that he's sort of crossing between each other, this is what's interesting, right? Because Darth Revan didn't have his redeemed saber at this point. But I do like the fact that if you wanted to, you could get away with this because this look could be featured later on. Now I say could be because the armor is different. But if you didn't want to use his redeemed saber here, which is actually pointed out in the video game, Knights of the Old Republic in the Old Republic, and kind of in Knights of the Old Republic issue 42 comic. Now I say kind of because the hilt design is a little bit different, but his ignited effect here in terms of his kyber crystal, that changed a lot for him. And again, it's a customizable thing in the video game, so there is no true concrete canon ignited effect, at least that I could find. But in the comic, like I said before, it is purple. The hilt design is different though. Now, since this is Darth Revan though, we're gonna go ahead and stick with the Fallen Revan lightsaber, which is in the Old Republic Shadow of Revan expansion. Now, Revan's undead corpse, right, receives his Knights of the Old Republic hilt represented as a red blade. That in-game is actually called the Fallen Revan's lightsaber, is seen here. And that actually works for Darth Revan, right? They're promoting it as Darth Revan. It works. So if he wanted to, he could also just wield the redeemed lightsaber hilt as well. There is a lot more that I could dive into here, but I'd rather not. The water is a bit murky in that respect, but you don't need to know every waking detail about the character to make a decision. Just a few things I wanted to point out. Even the Mandalorian mask isn't that important for me to point out because it's there, it's indicative of who Revan is, but it is something cool to know if you dive into the character's background. Here we have utilization of the dynamic effects, which this pose looks really cool. I like the use of that, although I don't personally use them. It is cool seeing poses with them used. Here we have a closer look at the metallic copper paint applications. Again, for new collectors, this is plastic painted to appear as if it were metal. Now the split cut boot design here is, I'm wondering though if there's a cut up top. It's not terribly limited, but I do wonder if there's any more give beneath it or not. I guess we'll have to wait and see. At this point, it's several poses throughout some of the imagery here. This is exactly what Darth Revan would look like. Strictly the Fallen Revan's lightsaber there in his right arm. Then if you'd like to, chances are they probably, if they didn't Photoshop this in, they could have used something to have that stick in his hand. But either way, if you wanted to do this as well, you could. Now, I had no idea who Darth Revan was. I can't even tell you that I've heard of him before. But after learning more about his character and who he is, the more enticing this figure became to me. But one thing that I really wish Hot Toys would have considered as we come up to the final end card is a portrait design of the voice actor here on Instagram known as Reno Romano VO. Now this is a guy who lended his voice to the character Revan. In his latest photo here, even though it's rather old, 30 weeks, it's not that long, right? He is the voice actor for him, and I really wish they would have attempted maybe throwing in the likeness for that, but he is Legends. I just would have loved to have seen it personally. I'm not upset by it, but it would have been cool. Heading back over to Facebook though, we have an all new figure design, 2 LED lit lightsabers, pairs of hands mind you, which we don't really see that often, right? We've got bendable wire throughout the rest of the material on his suit, at least in terms of the cape, a couple other regions. This is a really cool looking design. Now, another tidbit of information, this character was actually supposed to show up in the Clone Wars alongside Darth Bane, but he was taken out last minute. And it's unfortunate because I'm sure Hot Toys would have probably taken more from that design versus this. But again, it's really cool to look at. Now, alongside Darth Revan, I was a little hopeful for his apprentice Darth Malak, but at the same time now we're talking likeness to maybe the voice actor, and that can get a little hazy. But getting back on topic, Darth Revan for $270. If you don't pre-order this within the 3 days-ish, you're just missing out on the coin. So if you're a collector and you would like it, you might want to jump on that pre-order, but if not, the collector's edition is still available. Now, while both editions are $270, we end up circling back to the is it worth it? Now, Hot Toys is starting to dive deeper into Legends, and to be honest, in my opinion, getting it out of the way, I think this is worth it. Is it expensive? Absolutely. The hobby is expensive. But for characters that we never saw Hot Toys creating and they're giving it to us in Legends form, at least until Darth Revan becomes canon, this is looking pretty good. I gotta be honest. Some of the poses are a little stiff. Apart from this one, I really like the look of this pose personally. I do think the cape looks a bit manufactured though in terms of the tattered holes. It's lacking a bit of oomph, but the idea is there. It reminds me of the Din Djarin Mando that we received previously. But apart from that, it's just some of the posing that I'm a little concerned about. Obviously, we won't have the ab crunch due to the armor, so that's understandable. But the rest of it in terms of the way that some of the poses appear, I don't know. It is a prototype, right? So I can only hope that the posability is somewhat decent. I personally went ahead and pre-ordered this. I'm gonna be straightforward. I know absolutely nothing about the character, love the look of it. And before I did this video, because I don't want to just be up here telling you guys that, oh, it's not worth it. I prefer to do my research before I jump into things. I'm not going to give my opinion on something unless I know what's going on first. So apologies for the delay. Is $270 worth it to you? Let us know down below. This is Jonathan with Boston Collectors. I appreciate your patience and thanks for watching.